The city of Atlanta will host the NBA All-Star Game on Sunday. The event comes as Congress prepares to vote on legislation that would challenge attempts by Republican-led states to impose new voting restrictions. A collective of NBA players, including LeBron James, have teamed up to create More Than a Vote. The advocacy group is launching a national campaign to combat voter suppression efforts that would disproportionately affect Black voters. For more, I want to bring in CBS News political contributor Antjuan Seawright. Antjuan, the NBA is taking aggressive action on social justice reform. Several teams have created committees to address diversity problems. Are team executives supporting more of these causes and in substantial ways? And as well as what can other leagues learn from the NBA?
Well, I applaud the NBA for taking the alley-oop thrown by the NFL players, i.e. Kaepernick and others, who wanted to simply stand up for Black and brown people being killed at the hands of law enforcement. The NBA took the alley-oop and they really finished the play in a strong way, not just by their words, but by their deeds. From the league themselves, from asking the players to wear certain things on their uniforms during warm-ups, etc. You can see the outfits of the arenas they play in, from them opening up the arenas to have early voting sites during the election. But the players, those who understand that these things impact perhaps the communities they grew up in and the people that watch them every day. They also understand the strength, the depth, and the width of their platform, their reach, their networks, and their net worth. And that's how change has always been made in this country. People with extraordinary reach stepping up to the plate, responding to some of the needs of today. And I applaud them for that. I think people sometimes forget that change is not one of those things that's automatically charged up. It takes battery cables or booster cables to really charge up change in this country. And that's how I see these athletes, both NBA, WNBA, NFL, and others, stepping up to the plate, being battery cables for change.
Well, LeBron James has really been a leader in this effort, but he and other athletes have faced blowback for taking up social causes. You and I were actually texting about this Swedish soccer player who said and called out LeBron specifically and said, quote, athletes should be athletes, politicians should do politics. What's your response to that?
Well, shut up and dribble is what they told LeBron. Shut up and coach. Fire the SOBs is what the former president said to NFL athletes taking a knee. This is not anything new. Anytime you've seen people advocating or pushing the envelope for change, they've always been met with great resistance. That's part of the American story. However, I think the difference between the days of Ali, Jackie Robinson, and others is that people actually applaud these athletes for what they're doing. There have been two polls as of late last year. Both of them indicate above 50% of the American people. The USA Today poll was the last one. That one had it at 54% support what these athletes are doing. And just imagine, Lana, if LeBron would have taken the advice of those who told him to shut up and dribble, or athletes to just stick to sports. We used your previous segment just showed how the Senate passed a COVID relief package that's going to touch every heart and mind of the American people. Well, that's because people in Georgia showed up in a very handsome way and turned out to vote to elect 2 Democratic senators. That would not have happened, in my opinion, if LeBron and others have not stepped up to the plate and really pushed African-American voters to maximize their potential at the ballot box. And so while some are saying shut up and dribble, I'm saying please keep on doing what you're doing because it is making a difference.
Well, we definitely know that that piece of legislation would not have passed without support from Senator Warnock and Senator Ossoff. So lawmakers in several states are trying to enact new voting restrictions coming out of this last presidential election. Talk to us about some of those new rules and how they would impact communities of color.
Well, those pieces of legislation simply will suffocate the voices and the positions of people, predominantly people who look like me. And we've seen that every single time there's an election where you have high turnout among Black and brown voters, this kind of trend has been consistent throughout history, you see an effort by the opposition party to suffocate or suppress those votes. We saw this in 2008, where voter ID laws were given birth in the South. They spread their way like wildfire around the country, and voter ID became a real issue. And we know the impact of voter ID laws, particularly on consequential communities. And now we had record turnout across the country as it relates to early voting in particular. And now you see legislation. I think it's 33 states with over 165 pieces of legislation to suppress the vote. So you cannot be surprised, but we have to absolutely fight back. It's so ironic that the NBA is taking this weekend to push back and fight against voter suppression in Atlanta, Georgia, a place where we all know it gave birth to, I think, the reason 2 senators from Georgia are in the U.S. Senate. But also, Lana, in a weekend which we celebrate the march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. We all know what that march was about. It was about expanding the right to vote in this country, in particular for Black people. And so all these things coming together, colliding this weekend, I think is a very precious moment. And it reminds us while we've come so far, we still have a long ways to go.
So true. Antjuan, before I let you go, I want to ask you about basketball star Jeremy Lin speaking out about recent attacks on Asian Americans. He said, quote, Asians can't only be passionate about Asian issues. African Americans can't only be passionate about African American issues. We have to band together. How do you build on that coalition, and how were his remarks received?
Well, you know, there's strength in numbers, and I oftentimes remind people that business, life, and politics has this in common. It's a game of addition and multiplication, not subtraction or division. And when one of your fellow brothers or sisters are hurting, then we all should feel the same pain. And so the one thing I love about what these athletes are doing in terms of using their platform is it's not just the African-American athletes who are speaking out because these issues cut through our communities more so than others. It's Black, brown, and others, including white athletes, who are also using their platforms and their influence to raise awareness around these issues, and not just raising awareness, but developing and putting together solutions. And so I applaud Jeremy Lin for speaking up and speaking out. I hope that there will be Black and white athletes who will join him in elevating his concerns and his voices. And I hope that doesn't just limit this effort to the NBA. I hope it expands across sports and across all platforms, because I think when everyone bands together and recognizes and raises an issue, I think that's how we get to a solution.
Antjuan, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.